welcome to Ask the Coach series, part 1. I'm joined today with our guest, James Perryman from Momentous. Welcome, James.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, James, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do, and a little bit about what you do.
So my business is Momentous, and I work with businesses, either small businesses that are maybe just one person. Often it's one person and they have associates, or they have people that work with them on a consultancy basis. And I work with small businesses that can be local to an area or even nationwide, who have grown, and they've maybe grown to the point that they're starting to have people in managerial roles who maybe haven't got that experience before, or people who are having to demonstrate some really strong leadership skills. And again, it's just something new to them, or they want to grow as a business and they want to expand their customers and provide really great customer experience. And what I do is principally help individuals and businesses become more self-aware. If they know how they behave, if they know their personality as an individual, but also as a business, because a business needs a personality. If they know what that's about, and they know what's important to them, and they can pick up on it for their customers and their employees and the people they work with, then they can communicate in the way that works for individuals, works for other businesses, to provide great experiences, increase collaboration, engagement across people, and provide fantastic customer experience. And why do I do it? I've been on the receiving end of coaching. So during my corporate career, I was at a bit of a crossroad. I was my ideal client for some stage of my career, where I was frustrated, confused, thought that the hand from above would come around and tap me on the shoulder and say, James, it's your turn for greater things. And I realized it doesn't work like that. I've got to demonstrate my ambition. I've got to tell people that I'm wanting to do better things, and I've got to take the opportunities and ask for the opportunities. And it was a coach that helped me do that. And that really was a turning point in my career around 20 years ago. And the rest really has been history since then, in terms of helping people through their own leadership journey, coaching people from apprentices and graduates through to people knocking on leadership roles and board level roles, and helping them with their self-awareness, their emotional intelligence, their communication skills. So helping them be better individuals, better leaders, and better business leaders. And I love it. If that hasn't come across already in 2 minutes, I love it.
Yeah, so a coach needs a coach, James.
I absolutely think a coach does need a coach. Yes, yeah. I think there's a lot of myths around coaching, and I'm sure we're going to explore them, and that's kind of the whole part of your great series. But I think coaches do need coaches. We need someone that we can ask really difficult questions to. We sometimes need someone to ask difficult questions to us, to expand our thinking, show us other opinions, and help us reach conclusions that we probably could have done eventually, but we need that prod, we need that stimulus, we need someone to play devil's advocate sometimes, and that helps us be better coaches and run better coaching businesses.
That's great. And so out to the room, anyone, I can obviously unmute you if you just pop your hand up. Is there a question that you have for James about coaching, or anything you've heard about coaching and you would like to kind of explore it more? Yeah.
James, I know a lot of coaches actually, and I'm a big fan of coaches. I don't currently have one, but I do advise people to get one. And I would say that you will, trial and error, you will know when you find your coach. But also, would you agree, do you think you can outgrow a coach? I mean, I worked with mine for 18 months, and then by mutual assent, like on the tennis circuit, we parted company. We probably let it go a little too long. We're fine now, but it was awkward at the time.
So I think, yes, you can outgrow a coach, because you have a coach for a specific reason. And once they've helped you fulfill your goal, once they've helped you get to that point that you went to them in the original place for, then that goal's been met. And if you prolong it any longer, then they're probably moving into a boundary where maybe you've grown into someone that's bigger and better than where you were before. and you might be needing help and support from a coach that isn't something they specialize in. And actually the right thing, as you did eventually, is to say, I don't think this is working for me anymore, or even for a coach to be good enough and mindful enough to say, this has gone beyond A, what we agreed, and B, what I specialize in. You now need someone else. And I've probably got them in my network. I can probably introduce them to you to help you move to your next stage of growth and development.
I am on the market for a coach at some stage. Yeah. Oh, look, Lorraine,
I heard that. John Harvey.
Thanks, John, for your question. I'm just going to pop you back on mute. So, anybody else in the room have a question, or shall I fire a question at James? Okay, Andy, I think you pipped John, so let me unmute you. Okay, Andy.
It's a simple question. Looking at the wonderful grey hair, in terms of teaching an old dog new tricks. Are there specialists who work with slightly older people? I've got sort of 40, 45 years worth of work experience. So where would you start almost?
It doesn't matter if you're 20, 40, 60 or 100, and it depends on what you're after. So you've got 40, 45 years experience. That's more stuff, if we're working together, for us to leverage and to say, all right, so what's that given you? Why has that led you to where you are now? But ultimately, what is it you're trying to achieve? If you're looking ahead to the next 10 years, 20 years, why is that? You might want a complete change of direction in the same way that someone who's 20 years old at the start of their career doesn't know what direction, and so they need a direction. So I think the answer is it doesn't matter how old you are, whether you have a coach or not. I think it's almost similar to the question that John raised around having the right coach. There might be coaches out there who have gone through a similar journey that you've gone through, and actually they get how you'll be feeling, they get what's important to you, they get what's not important to you anymore, and so they've got that natural empathy, they've got that natural connection with you that might be harder than someone who is a coach who's 20 years old or 25 years old. They just haven't had those life experiences yet.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the real test is to find someone that you think can help you, and you have that first conversation with them. And most coaches would want to do that, and that wouldn't be part of the coaching package. So they want to do it so that they get to know you and what you're trying to achieve and be comfortable that they can help you, because a coach needs to be successful in helping someone. But also you get to meet them and think, do you know what, I like this person, I've connected with them on the right level, I'm really confident they can help me. Great, we move forward. But we both move forward knowing we're both in it together and we both can see the success in it.
That's a really key point, James, just to emphasize. And actually, Andy, age is just a number. Remove the age from it, because it's just, a coach will work with you as a person, and the age is it's not a factor, because it's kind of where you're at in your life, so where you've been, where you're at in your life, and where you want to go. And most good coaches will always do at least sort of a 15 or a 30-minute discovery call with you to make sure that they are the right coach for you. And if they're a good coach, they will actually say, I'm not the right coach for you. So connect with a good coach is a good tip. There's some good coaches around. It's a great question, Andy. John.
I was going to ask how you see coaching as compared with training or learning or mentoring or all these other approaches. I was in IT training for many years, and after I finished that, I discovered that I should have been calling it learning all along. And
great question. Really great question.
That is a good question. So 3 different things: coaching, mentoring, and training. So let's take 2 of them to start with: coaching and mentoring. Mentoring is where you would go to someone as a mentor for them to direct you a bit more. So you would probably have a specific challenge, you'd need some specific knowledge or skills, and they would be very focused in helping you get those knowledge and skills. Probably part of the agreement with them is that they open up their network to you quite readily to connect you with other people that can help you, but you'll have a very specific goal, a very specific target of what you're trying to get to, but they would provide you with answers. A coach is different. A coach, you can have a goal of what you want to achieve, but the coach won't give you the answers specifically. They will more ask you questions that help you unearth the answers. They'll guide you. A mentor will hold your hand and get you to the end. A coach will sit and stand with you and look ahead and say, what if we went in that direction, John? What do you think is going to happen there? How do you think you'll feel? Do you think that'll help you on the track? Do you think you've got what it takes? What if we take that direction instead? So they'll be with you the whole way, rather than the mentor literally holding your hand down that route. So they are two distinctly different things. You can have both at the same time. And a lot of good coaches can flick between being a coach or a mentor. And the great ones will call it out. So they might say, we're working together in a coaching capacity, but I'm just going to be more of a mentor right now. I think I just need to be quite subscriptive in terms of what I'm telling you to help us get through this bit. And then I'll put my coaching hat back on, and you'll recognize that difference. The difference between then coaching and training, I think, apart from the obvious things of logistics of perhaps training more than one person at a time, training a group of people, there are subtly different styles that you would adopt as a coach or a trainer, and subtly different ways in which you would think about your audience. So one of the big things when you're training people is thinking about their learning styles and how they like to learn, and thinking about how you share what you want to train. So do you share PowerPoints? Do you have workbooks? Do you have reflective exercises, small groups, big groups, pre-work, post-work? Do you have a mix of videos, images, words, content, and so on? So you're constantly thinking about appealing to different learning styles and how people like to receive information and how they process it and how it sticks. With coaching, it's a bit around the learning style, but it's also a bit around personality style and how people like to communicate and be communicated with. And that still does apply to training, but it's even more so important for coaching. And coaching should be a longer process. So if I wanted to work with you on your communication skills, I could invite you to a workshop, or even we could do it one-to-one, and I could train you and take you through my half-day coaching skills training program. And at the end of it, you would have all the skills and the tools and techniques to go out there and be amazing at communicating. If we did it in a coaching capacity, I would say, John, we need to meet at least 3 times so that I understand why is it you need to communicate better. Let's understand how you communicate. Let's understand maybe where it's going wrong sometimes. What are you trying to achieve? And we go through a bit more of a journey, broken down, but we would explore as we're going along. How are you developing? How's it going applying some of these things? How's it making you feel? Is it getting the right results? Do we need to tweak it? And it's a longer journey, just broken down into different steps. Does that help answer the question? Yeah.
Great explanation and a great question, because I think people do really struggle with the difference between it. And no, that was really greatly explained. Thank you, James. Does anyone else in the room? I see that we have quite a few people that have joined us on Facebook. So if you wonder why I keep looking that way, I'm just looking at my other device. Anybody on Facebook or anybody else in the room that would like to ask any questions? It doesn't have to always be about coaching. It could be about how James maybe got into coaching. Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question, James.
Okay.
What does it take to become a coach?
What does it take to become a coach? You've got to be a good listener. That's one of the key skills, and it's not just about sitting and giving someone the space to talk and then just getting on with your own agenda of what you think you need to do in a coaching session. You've really got to listen. And you've also got to listen to what's not being said. And this kind of comes to communication. When you're coaching someone, if you've got the luxury of being in person with them face to face, then you can read their body language, you can read their facial expressions, you can hear the tone of their voice, the same as you can on the phone and to some extent on something like Zoom or Skype. But you've got to listen to how people answer and what they don't say, and pick up on and think about, when you've got to know them, why they're answering in a certain way. So listening is really important. Being comfortable asking questions that might make the coachee really think and not feel wholly uncomfortable, but just push them outside their comfort zone a bit and really get them thinking. But you've got to be confident to do it, and you've got to be confident to explain to a coachee why you're doing it, because it's helping them grow, it's helping them think more broadly and think of other options. You've got to want to help people. If you're the kind of person that just down to your bones isn't about helping people and seeing people grow and develop, then there's something missing there. I think, that's kind of inherent about someone that's a coach or a mentor or a trainer. You like helping people and seeing people grow. And you've got to be willing to invest in their journey. So one thing I've learned through my own experiences being a coachee or being a mentee and moving into coaching is it has to be more than one coaching session. So you've got to be prepared to tell people that it needs to be more than one coaching session, because coaching can be a bit like a drug. You have one session with someone for an hour with a bit of self-exploratory work, getting to know them, they get to know themselves, you give them some great advice, and they finish that coaching session on a real high. They've learned something, they've got a way to move forward, and they leave that session thinking, that was brilliant, I know what I've got to do. They then get back into their day lives, business, personal life, and those handful of actions that they took and that great intent and that motivation they took just starts to wear off a bit because life takes over. And next thing, it's the following week and they haven't quite got around to doing what they said they wanted to do. Then it's 2 weeks later and they've forgotten why they said they were going to do what they were going to do. And you've not got anything, there's not an ongoing relationship there for you to check in with them, to check how they're doing, find out how they're getting on with what they said, which is why it's important that it's a journey. For me, every coaching intervention and relationship I have has to be a minimum of 3 sessions because I want my clients to get value from it. I don't want them to have that immediate hit and then 2 weeks later forget why they had the hit and actually nothing has changed. So you've got to be in for the long journey. You've got to be comfortable asking questions. You've got to be a good listener. You've got to care about seeing people grow. For me, they're kind of the 3 or 4 main things on top of the other things I've got in self-assessments and checklists that I give other people who are interested in coaching, where there's a whole load of other little bits that help as well.
So, James, ultimate question I'm going to ask you now. What is the best question you've ever asked a coachee?
Wow, what's the best question I've ever asked a coachee? That's a good question. You should have prepared me with that one.
I know. You know what I'm like.
you probably picked up that I'm comfortable as a coach asking my coachees questions that push them out their comfort zone. So I've got one, and it might not be the best one, but I think it really brings to life the importance of listening and just being honest with people. So I was in a coaching session, and this was with a client I had who I'd originally met having worked with a company doing a bit of consultancy work, and I started coaching her while I was working there, and it was quite clear when we were coaching that she wanted to leave, and that was her goal. She needed to move on away from the company, and ultimately the time that I coached her while I was there gave her the confidence to do that. She left, she became a business owner, started her own business, and said, can you coach me? Can you help me grow my business? And think about how I package what I do, how do I price it, how do I promote it, how do I communicate to the world about me now in this new role? So we were probably in our 3rd or 4th session, and she's very energetic, full of ideas, opportunities. So our coaching sessions were vibrant. They chopped and changed a lot, and sometimes hard to keep up with, but good fun. And we're probably on about our 4th session, and we would meet at a venue that was kind of between us where we were based, and I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't feeling that the session was the same, and I was self-reflecting while I was in the session and thought, what am I doing wrong? Am I not asking the right questions? Am I failing here? Is my time up as a coach? What's going on? This feels so different. So I called time out. As we were talking, I just said, right, can we just stop? I said, I'm just going to step back from this. This doesn't feel the same. Something's changed. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's you. But if we've reached the end, back to the great question of, how can you outgrow a coach? If we've reached the end, I'd rather call this now if something's changed. And she kind of sat back and she just said, I've just found out I'm pregnant. And it had changed everything for her, because being a business owner with a plan of how to move forward, how to grow a business, how to scale it, suddenly this massive thing had entered her life and had changed her view of what was going to happen in kind of 7, 8, 9 months' time. But I needed to stop and just say, something is not right here, and I'm willing to accept it's me, and I'm willing to explore what's changed. But I think I just needed to call it out. And I think that's where a coach needs to have that self-awareness and needs to know when a relationship has reached the end and you've helped that person to the point they can't be helped anymore with what they're after, or you've just become the wrong person. Just be brave enough to call it out. So that might not be the boldest thing I've done, but it's certainly, for me, it typifies when you've got to ask that question and that it's important to, because then it meant for the rest of that session and the subsequent sessions, we had a different focus. It was about, does she still want to grow the business? How does that work when she becomes a mother? What boundaries change? And it meant I could give her specific help based on her new circumstances, her new direction.
Yeah, I totally get that. So from an intuitive perspective, having that sixth sense is so important because, go back to the point that James made around it's not what people say, it's what they don't say. As a coach, you've really got to pick up on that because that is the difference between a great coaching conversation and one that's just going to go nowhere. And what we don't want is any client to ever feel that their time is wasted. And we don't want to waste our time either. And so it's really important to pick up. And one of the things that I do is eyes. Eyes are so important when you're coaching people because they tell a story just in themselves. So I'm looking at all of you now. I'm looking in your eyes. We've actually had a question from Facebook, and the question is, it's quite specific. And James, feel free. If you don't feel comfortable answering it, then we can get back to this person after. But it says on here, what would you say if you had just lost a parent?
So I will answer that, and I'll apologise now if my voice wavers, but I can totally put myself in that position. So I lost my mum when I was 10, so I don't think I was self-aware enough then to know how to help myself through. And sadly, I don't think my dad was self-aware enough to know how to help me through, other than a hand around the shoulder and a brave, you'll get through this, son. My dad then unfortunately lost his life about 12 years ago to cancer. And so I knew that was going to happen. Now, 12 years ago, I was a lot more self-aware, in a coaching role, as a manager role. So I certainly was able to think about how other people feel and think about myself. And I think it's difficult, and obviously not knowing who's asked the question or your circumstances, but it creates a whole load of questions for you, because for me, as an individual that knew I was losing a parent, I was a son losing a parent, I was a brother to someone losing their parent, I was a dad to someone losing their grandparent, and I had all these roles to fill, and suddenly that felt quite overwhelming. And I realised, as a natural helper, I was trying to be there for everyone else. I was trying to be a great brother, I was trying to be a great dad, I was trying to be a great son, and I forgot that I just need to be me and think about what I need from that person. So I was fortunate enough to have that time to work that through, and get what I needed from my dad. Those questions that I'd always wanted to ask, I could ask. And so I did, but it meant it was a different journey. And so whether, the person themselves, or they're asking for someone else, if they've lost someone suddenly or they've lost someone and they knew it was going to happen, I think don't be afraid just to be a bit selfish and just to put yourself first, and just think, what if it is your parent, what did they give you? What little stories, what little things, nuggets of information, nuggets of support did they give you that carried you through life? So for me, one of the things my dad said was always, if you can't make a decision by counting to 10, it's not a decision worth making. The answer is no, quite simply. And just to go with your gut feel and don't overthink stuff. And I know I'm a good overthinker, I'm a good overanalyzer. So there are times where I just stop, and I say it to my brother as well when he's at kind of crossroads in his job or relationships, or should I propose, should I not? Kind of go back to what our dad used to say. So, what bits of advice did your parents give you that has held through and has guided you well? And think back to just some of the positive things that they did in your life, some of the really great memories, because they're the things that see you through. And for me, there's not a week goes by where I don't stop and think, my dad would love it seeing this, or, if my dad was here now, he'd be glad that he's not here in this middle of this crisis. And what would he make of it? What would he say? What would his view be? What would his direction to me be as a business owner? And so don't ever forget them. Don't ever shut them out. and just think of them. They, I love the saying about the fact they're in a different room and they'll see you at some point. They are in a different room, so just talk to them from the different room, ask them a question, get their advice, and a bit like a coach, the answer will come to you indirectly into your mind, but yeah, kind of embrace it with them. But ultimately, if it's someone you've lost recently with what's going on, or it's been a while, just think back to the great stuff that they brought you and that you shared with them.
Thank you, James. That's a really great response. And I think in the scheme of things, Andy's got a question, but just to kind of focus in on the situation we're in right now, or if we've had particular challenges in our life before, what they're doing is they're preparing you for your next chapter, and you can utilize some of that resilience and strength and courage that got you through to prepare you for the future. So typically coaches will kind of look at that particular situation and really kind of look at what was it that you learned and that you can take forward into the future with you in order to become stronger. But definitely remember the good times. That's a key point. Thank you, James. So Andy, did you have another question? Sorry, James. Sorry.
It was,
go on, Andy.
It was just picking up on what you were saying, James, and it's very reassuring to hear what you say, because I had a conversation with a member of staff today who's a young lady who lost her dad when she was 7. And she was looking at photographs and she said she felt so guilty she couldn't remember. And she'd forgotten about him and all this kind of stuff. And I said exactly the same as you. Just pick a point in time or a favourite photograph where you remember really, really vividly good times and things. Because she's saying that all she can remember is the bad things she's done in her life and that her dad wouldn't be proud.
Mm.
Well, you go through life and all you remember is the bad things, but you never remember the millions of good things that you do.
No, that's right. And there's kind of helping people through bereavement is also something that's important to me. And I don't do that in a coaching capacity or a counselling capacity. That's not me. There are people who are amazing at that. But what I do is I work with a couple of charities, so Winston's Wish and Child Bereavement UK, who work with families and obviously particularly young people who are going through bereavement. And some of the tools and techniques I've learned as being a volunteer with them for helping people when they know someone's about to die or someone has died has really worked for me. Little things like salt memory jars, using a film reel of how the person died. They're just really great tools that help you get the story out of your head and onto a bit of paper or into a jar. But it also helps you then tell other people. When that conversation comes up and someone says, as I've had recently, where people have said, "Oh, are your parents safe?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're 100% safe. There's no problem there." But it's a story you've got to get comfortable with, because if you need to tell it, you want to tell it with passion. You want to tell it with nice memories. I've got not great memories of each of my parents, but I choose not to really embrace those because it's better to have the good ones.